Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by Data Talks Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events and today is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, go to the description. There is a link to our events. Click on this link and you'll see all the events we have in our pipeline. You will also see our past events. But for that, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel because all the past events and all the future events will be here. So if you're unsubscribed, subscribe now. And I think around 50% of people who watch these are not subscribed, so do fix it. And then last but not least, if you're not in our Slack community, you should join it too, because there you can hang out with other data enthusiasts. During today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a pinned link in the live chat. So click on this link, ask your question, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. I will open the questions we prepared for you. And I think we can start, can we?
Let's go.
Okay. This week, we'll talk about starting and running a consultancy in the data space. We have a special guest today, Aleksander. Aleksander was a product manager at Delivery Hero. Then he became a co-founder and failed a few startups. And currently, he is running a data analytics agency in Berlin. He was also almost an archaeologist. I'm really curious to hear that story, and we will probably hear that a bit later. And yeah, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here.
So the questions for today's interview were prepared by Johanna Bayer. Thanks, Johanna, for your help. And yeah, before we start with our main topic of starting a data consultancy, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far? And please mention this archaeologist part.
Sure, absolutely. I can start with that. So I mean, since I was 6 years old, I think, and up until I was 18, like if you ask me what I'm going to be doing in life, I will tell you I'm going to be an archaeologist. I always loved history, geography. I was collecting like dinosaurs and things like that. And like I applied, like my entire educational path in high school was skewed towards me going to study archaeology, etc. And I applied and I got even admitted to two unis. And then that summer, I actually went and worked on the excavation site to just get a feel of what it means to be an archaeologist. And then, long story short, when I came back, I decided I'm going to stick to the history books and documentaries, and I went to study something else, which was political sciences, international business. That's my educational background. It's pretty much everything and nothing. And then, after that, I somehow managed to get into a startup e-commerce ecosystem in Warsaw. I even co-ran a startup on my own before I moved to Berlin, which is also a story. Then, I moved to Berlin in 2014, end of 2014. I moved for a job. It was a product management job at Delivery Hero, one of the spin-offs at the time. This is where I met Marco, who is my business partner or business better half, and we built pretty cool stuff during our Delivery Hero times together. 2019, we decided to quit to do something on our own. We went through a few ideas for a product. That was always the kind of main goal. I wanted to build a product company. Did a bit of consulting in the data space in between to also get a feel of what problems are there. And then build our main product that we built and tried to market was Data Stack as a Service, which is like an entire data pipeline from the ingestion to actually modeling and visualization, including the warehousing. That didn't pan out for various reasons. And we
wondering why. Because it seems like I see a lot of startups who work in this area, and some of them are doing fine.
Y42, Clean AI. There is plenty of them. Motor Data. There's Veld. There's quite a few of them. So we did a very extensive market validation of that idea, and it's we believe that the market is not there for it, or the market is very, very small. Because essentially what you're selling is you're selling a technology. Selling technology to tech people is very difficult because they will always think that they can build it faster and better themselves. And even with the tooling, like, you know, if you look at the options that you have in the tooling landscape today, you can build a data stack in a day or two, you know, and that's gonna do a decent enough job.
Can you actually build it, or this is what developers think?
I mean, you stitch tools together, right? You take an ingestion, you take Airbyte, DBT, BigQuery, or Snowflake, or ClickHouse, or whatever, and then you do transformations with DBT, and you plug Metabase on top, and you're good to go. The real problem starts when you actually put data into it, and you now need to map your business into the data model. Like that's something that is very difficult to automate. So.
This is probably difficult, right, for a startup that provides data stack as a service, right? Because you only provide the stack, right, and then all the business knowledge, all the business transformation happen after that.
Exactly. So you know, if you're selling it to tech people, that's a very difficult sell. And then if you turn around and go to that with the business people, let's say you go to a CMO or a CFO or a CEO, and you say, hey, look, I have this fantastic piece of technology that now you can use. And I was like, what do I do with it? So, oh, now you need a data analyst to actually run this. It's like, okay, so now you're selling me something that I need to not only pay for, but now you're telling me to hire someone to do my data for me. Like, then I just hire the person, and that person to do the data for me. So what's the point for me paying? So it's you would need to build it in a way that you also automate the modeling. And you know, those tools also exist. I think there is CLA that automates reporting for marketing, for instance. There are certain tools that automate reporting for finance. So basically, you go directly from the source to a report, and that's value. That's valuable. Tech on its own, it's not really valuable. And mapping, you know, and then the real work goes into the data modeling, because at the end of the day, you just need to map the business into the tables and entities.
Is this how you ended up doing consulting?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, initially we had a few other ideas about the product, and then the first one we also validated very quickly, and that it just doesn't make any sense, and people who were product managers, and it was actually, the idea was inspired by my inability to pull data from a SQL database back in the days at Delivery Hero, and I was always bug Marco to do it for me. We validated that this is not something that, like, product managers don't have that problem that much. They have bigger problems to solve first as a community. And then, okay, so, you know, we already quit our job. What can we do? Okay, let's go to consulting. Let's actually discover the problems in the data space. And that's how we started. And then while doing certain projects, we got gigs, etc. We discovered that, hey, maybe we can do the data stack as a service, because we always, whenever we start a project, very often we just need to do a stack, and it's repeatable work. So that's how it started. And then we tried. We actually found the first customer like very quickly. From the beginning of, like, you know, we started searching for the first customer. It took us 2 weeks to land one, and we had 0 product. We had nothing. So we basically we sold an idea that we're going to solve that problem, and
it was the data stack idea, or the second one?
The data stack idea.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we solved it without having a product, and that actually led us to a bit of a wrong path going forward. Without getting into many details. Yeah, so when we decided to stop doing that, when we did like a really extensive market validation, whether we can sell this, whether the market actually exists, we decided to go back to consulting and fully focus on that from then on.
I'm wondering, how did it happen that you managed to sell an idea without having an actual implementation? Was it like a part of your user research? You were reaching out to companies to understand what their problems are, and they are like, okay, yeah, we have this problem, solve it for us.
So basically, like, you know, and I think this advice is applicable to any kind of business, startup, service that you want to provide, like anything like that. Whatever you do, you really need to first see whether the problem that you're trying to solve exists, and whether there is enough people to pay for it. And so what we did is, I need to get royalties for that, because I go around and I talk about this book a lot. The book is called The Mom Test, right?
Great
And
book.
what that book allows you to do is it allows you to validate your business idea without having anything, just by talking to people. And the trick is that you never tell them what you're doing. Because the moment you tell people what your idea is, they will lie to you, because they want to be nice to you and because they know your ego is on the line. And it gives very, very practical advice on how to talk to people and how to extract information that you get very valuable feedback. And you do 10, 15 conversations like that, that tells you a lot. And you didn't have to write a single line of code. So we were trying to do mom tests. So we were putting messages in various Slack communities or different job boards, etc. We're trying, or pinging people directly. We're just trying to talk to people about the problem of, like, is not having a technology that can process your data, is that a problem that hinders you from actually doing useful stuff with it? And we offered free consulting for the time. So like, you talk to us and then we'll offer you free consulting in return. So that the time is also worthwhile for you. And we managed to find a person. That was our first customer. We talked to them. They explained it was a CTO of a company. They're still our customer, because the product that we built still runs, and that customer still is paying for it. And yeah, he, at the end of the conversation, he simply asked us, like, okay, like, so we told you about our problems. Like, clearly this is a problem for us. What are you trying to do? What's in it for you? And we just explained the idea that we had, and he basically said, you know what, like, make an offer, you can build it for us, and we'll be your first customer.
That's
and
amazing.
That's how we sold the first copy of something that does not exist yet.
So you said, so there is a book called Mom Test. The book describes how to extract information from people from these user interviews to really understand if your problem, the problem you're trying to solve, if it exists and if people want to pay for solving this problem, right? So you try to do this Mom Test, you reach out to different people, and some of them were quite interested in.
Yeah, I mean, in general, people will talk to you. Like, if people are genuinely, they're willing to help. If they know that they're not trying to sell them something, and they'll be very keen. Like, because people love to talk about themselves. It's just in human nature. So if you just know how to nudge and steer the conversation in the right direction, you can learn, like, really a lot.
Can you maybe give us an example, or like, how exactly does it work? Like, let's say you want to build a startup that sells data stack as a service, right? So how do you approach these user interviews?
You usually ask them about you need a general, like, fairly general leading question at the beginning. Like, for instance, like, if you're talking to a data analyst, because our initial target was data analysts. And we knew that data analysts at the time, they don't really have enough, very often they don't really have enough technical skills to put together a stack like that. And they keep extracting, they download the CSV from Salesforce, they have some Google Sheets, they copy and paste, there's a lot of manual work. So it's, prone to errors, etc. And they try to stitch things together and do analysis on top of that. If they would have a central place where all those sources are in, which is, today is the standard, let's call it the modern data stack, you can then run your SQL, and you can build visualization. You can serve. You can help the business to answer business questions. So we would ask them, hey, what do you do all day? Where does your time go? And then you start with that, and you listen and tune in for little nuggets of, like, oh, maybe they have a problem here, and then you dig deeper into that. And you never ask questions like, oh, would you buy this? Would you pay for this X? Would you, I don't know, because if you ask someone a very hypothetical question, it's like, yeah, if you're giving this amazing piece of technology, yeah, I'll take it, right? Like, oh, is this a problem to you? It's like, yes, it's a problem. That's not useful information, because people also like to complain, If actually they tell you it's a problem, you still need to gauge whether it's like, how big is that problem? So you ask them, when was the last time it happened? If you don't solve it, what are the consequences? Is it just a mere inconvenience? Because sometimes it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I copy and paste this thing, But if they tell you like, if I don't solve this, then potentially we're risking losing revenue. So, well, that's a big problem, right? And then you're trying to figure out how frequent the problem is. Is this something that happens every day? Is it something that happens? It's painful, but happens to them once every 6 months? Then yeah, maybe it's not big enough, It's you're trying to extract very, very concrete examples of their workflow, where they suffer, and what the actual suffering, what the pain is.
And how do you record them? So I guess during the interview you record the conversation, right? And then you somehow capture this in a bunch of Google documents or something like that, right?
These conversations are usually, you have we didn't record them, so we would take notes. We would basically whenever we could, it would be the two of us doing that call. It's actually very beneficial to do it in pairs. You don't want to more than two people, because now if it's just one person that you're interviewing, there are three people on the call or in the room, it might feel a bit overwhelming and stressful. So people won't open up that much, but like if two people is fine. So one person is responsible for asking the questions and nudging in the right direction, and the other person is responsible for taking the notes. And this way, and then the other person also needs to be the kind of the guardian of the conversation, in a way that whoever asks it's very easy to start the pitch, especially when you already have something. And you never want to pitch them, because the moment you reveal what you're doing, again, they're going to start lying to you. Some people are direct. Some people will tell you that, well, your product is stupid, doesn't make any sense.
Most don't, right?
But most don't. Exactly. And, you can't, you can't have 1,000 conversations to hope that you're going to, land 10 people that are super honest with you. So you want to avoid the pitching as much as possible, and basically the other person's job is to also make sure that whoever is asking questions doesn't get too excited and jump ahead with pitching too early.
Your background is in product management. I mean, archaeology aside, what is the background of Marco? Is he also
Marco is a software engineer.
Software engineer. Okay. So who was? I guess it was two of you and Marco, who were doing the interviews. So how did you split these responsibilities? Who was taking notes? Who was asking questions?
It depends. It's
so you could do both, right?
Okay. Yes.
See, interesting. Yeah, and so you did this 10-15 conversations, right? Following the map test, and then at the end you found out that there is no, like, the problem is not big enough, right?
It's not really that. Yeah. So the mistake that we did was we sold it without having it, which is an ideal scenario. Like if someone is taking out their credit card and telling you, yeah, I'm going to buy this without you having anything at all, that's a great signal. You just need to have enough people that will do that. So we got excited. We went and built it. We launched it. We did everything, etc. We helped with setting it up with the models, and with setting up the metabase and transferring some of they already had metabase, so we transferred some of the reports onto the modeling layer, that they were faster. They actually run. It was like, well, if we can find a customer in 2 weeks without having it like that, well, we should just like go out and spam everyone. Like we're sitting on a gold mine, right?
Well, so was it the case?
No, it wasn't. So we spent a good few months trying to acquire the next customers, and it never happened. And that's when we were like, hang on, like maybe we're just like we were trying to run before we can walk. Let's go back to validating. And we went back to validating. We managed to line up, I think, 15 people. that could be potential customers. And then after talking to them, doing the proper MAM tests, etc., it became kind of obvious that it's just not there. Like, I mean, this product makes sense, right? Like it makes sense. There are companies who use it, and it's just, I don't think there's enough people, enough companies that where it makes sense, or that the life cycle is long enough, because you sacrifice a certain degree of flexibility with products like that. It's a black box. You don't know what it is, and you either can build it in an opinionated way, or you build it in an open way. But in an open way, I mean, then it's it's either open source, or there are different pieces of it, like ingestion, transformation, etc. And you can't really, like, doing a compromise is very difficult. You can't have it inflexible but yet allow for certain changes. Like that's just very technically challenging to actually build. So you need to pick. And if you're picking it as you can, this is what it is. This is a black box. You don't really ever know how it works. It's people don't like that. We talked to some of the customers of our competitors, and there is something to be said that if your team is a little bit more junior, then this provides certain guide rails, and they cannot mess up too much. I mean, they still can mess up models, right? But you can mess up models always. So that, like, having that kind of a rigid structure, can basically make up for certain mistakes that less experienced people do while working on the pipelines.
So these clients of yours that you landed during conducting this MAM test, so they were interested in the product that you want to build, but at the end you kind of ended up consulting them, right? So you said that let's build this thing for you.
Exactly, because what they really wanted and what the real benefit was, it was the free consulting that they got out of it when actually we were building it. And because we built their models, we went and built their modeling layer in our tool, obviously, but like we wrote the SQL. And that's the real value. We went and we understood their business and translated it into SQL models. And that was the real value, not the shell that would run it, right? And it took us a while to realize that, actually, because you're excited that someone is actually willing to pay you for the product that you built, and that can lead you the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. So how did you realize that building these models is what you want to do, and you and Marco started this consultancy company?
This is it's where the value is. It's when you're working with data is to us bridging a gap between the business and whatever is hidden in the data that you collect. And it's first and foremost, you start with that. Someone has a business question, they need to take a decision. You start with that. You spend time understanding what it is. And it's a lot of, talking to your stakeholders. There is a lot of product work there. Like, I always keep saying that there is so much overlap between the product managers' jobs and data analysts' job, because data teams don't have product managers, usually. Some bigger ones and bigger companies, of course, yes. But most of the teams don't have that luxury. So someone needs to go and do that work to really uncover, because at the end of the day, like, data teams, it's an internal product. If you're talking like BI, business intelligence, etc., it's an internal product. You're serving your internal customers. They work in other teams. And this is where the value is, and this is what's difficult. Once you know more or less what needs to happen, I mean, there is a lot of talk. We have ChatGPT now. There's a lot of talk about data science, etc. Like, a lot of companies can do without it. A lot of companies don't have the data. So, like, they need help with basic things, and the basic things take them 80% of the way. And once you get that 80% of the way, then you can start thinking, okay, how do I optimize the next 2%, the next 3%, the next? And this is where this is where machine learning, this is where data science really come into play and really can be that valuable. But at the beginning, and we're talking, we're talking here like medium-sized companies, we're talking startups, post-seed, pre-series A, series A, that kind of level. Unless your product, unless your value proposition requires AI, right? And requires machine learning. That's a different story. Then you really need to invest from the get-go, because otherwise you don't have your value proposition. But when you're talking about, analyzing the business, understanding how the business is doing, predicting how the business can be doing, there is a lot of very simple and pragmatic and very often boring things that you can do that do not require a lot of effort. But to dig this out, you really need to understand what is needed, and that's a difficult part.
I want to ask you about the simple, pragmatic, and boring things, but maybe before that, yeah, I'm curious. So why is it called consulting? Like, do you just go there, ask questions, or you?
No,
What
we're
do you consult
hands-on.
about?
We are hands-on. We are implementing things. So I mean, consulting can have a very, very negative connotation, right? Like let's be upfront about, like, you pay consultants, they come in, they tell you what to do, and they go away and they give you their invoice and wash their hands of the consequences or the results. So we implement things. We basically go in and then we try to figure out what's needed, and then we will implement those things, and then we take full accountability if it works or not, obviously. So I mean, in a nutshell,
Why is it called consulting? Because to me, consulting is actually a company has a question and then they need to consult somebody on solving the question. So they consult, they get input, and then they go implement it. I guess this is like a classical.
No, this is a good question. This is a good question. Why is it called consulting? Like, because that's what it means. You consult someone if you have a problem, right? And then they basically get you unstuck. But we're talking here also about implementing things. I don't know.
It's called consulting too, right? So this is the kind
It's
of
called,
consulting.
yeah, it's just a kind of, it's just a subgroup of consulting, type of consulting, probably. But yeah, very often I laugh that, you're being paid to kind of come in and advise and then implement what people need, but very often you end up just implementing what people want.
Mhm.
Because there is a limited amount of influence you can actually have, and exerting influence sometimes is just just difficult. It really depends on the client.
Okay, so first, let me ask you about how you find these clients. So you said that your clients are usually startups, like pre-seed startups, or I don't know, Series A startups that do not necessarily have this data infrastructure. So in order to do cool things in the future, they need to get the basics first, right? So how do you find these companies? Where do you find them? Like, do you open, I don't know, how is it called? Like there are websites where you see like TechCrunch, right, or something like that, where you can
Yeah,
see.
no, so it's it's a little bit different. I mean, so consulting or freelancing or basically like contractual based work, because like at the end of the day we're external partners or external providers, external contractors. It's a very much network based business, but it's not that you cannot just like wait until your network gives you gigs. You need to help it a little bit, right? So getting the first projects is usually it's the most difficult
For
always.
you, it wasn't that difficult, right? I
Well,
mean, but like it.
we got when we switched to consulting,
Uh-huh.
it's a little bit different than we would tell people like, hey, you're doing consulting now. Like, you reach out to your network first. That's what you do. This is the first step. You let people who you think can introduce you to potential clients or who can work for you, because you build up your network and people go work for different companies. Maybe they need help as well. So you do that first, and you let people know that you are looking, right? And you let them know you need to think about like, okay, what is my positioning? Who is actually my target customer? Because then if you need to explain to others what you're doing, even if it's just consulting, like, okay, it can have many shapes and forms. So you need to think about that and you reach out to them. So that's step number one. But again,
how do you actually do this? Like, because it sounds easy, right? So you just, okay, who is my target audience? Who is my target customer? How do I position also? How do we position ourselves? It looks simple, but when you actually start,
it's not easy.
It's not easy, right? So how?
I mean,
do you
we struggle with
test?
this up until today. We basically experiment. We see what lands. We see what message, what kind of what strikes the chord on the other side, right? So, I mean, you always start with like, okay, who do I want to work with? And we are even now experimenting with with how we position ourselves. So, for instance, we back in like when we were starting, like, oh, we were the guys who will come in and will build your first data warehouse, your first reports, models, etc. Like that's what we were doing. And we had we knew what is the moment in the life of the company that actually that this becomes helpful and it actually makes sense, because you shouldn't build your data warehouse too fast, right? Like there is a point in time that makes sense, and it's at the beginning of the company, like it just simply doesn't. And so we knew which kind of companies we should go for, and these were the kind of around Series A startups. Because this is, if we're doing things right, this is where you're hitting your product market fit. So this is when you're going to start scaling. And that's something that is very useful when you more or less already know what you're doing and you just need to do more of it. You're getting out of the experimentation phase. This is where
focus, like on did you have any like geographical restrictions? Did you focus on
no.
companies in Berlin, or you just targeted everyone?
Europe. As long as we're more or less in the same time zone, like working with companies in California would have been difficult. Also, we don't have a footprint there, we don't have network, and our competition is always local. So it's you can go global, but it's when you want to grow to a certain size, then it probably makes sense to expand. So we would talk to VCs. We know a few VCs, etc. So hey, does anyone from your portfolio companies, do they need help? You think about which are the people that can help you to land the clients, and you just need to, like, when it comes to, I just want to go back to positioning because that was your question. You need to think about who is your customer, and then what is the value proposition? What are you offering them, right? Even in data field, like it can be so many things. So you can decide to, like, so now we're trying to say, we are on-demand data analysts, right? And we work directly with the business, and we can help you optimize your revenue. We can help you optimize your marketing spend. We can, maybe there is some kind of risk that you're having in the company, and you want to nuke that risk. Maybe there is, maybe you want to know who your customers are. Maybe you want to do some kind of segmentation. We start with a business opportunity or a business problem, and yes, we can build the infrastructure. We have full stack capabilities, but because we have, like, between the two of us, we have it's a blessing and a curse because we can literally do anything. We start from, we have product skills. The both of us have data analytics skills, and then Marco has the engineering skills. So we can really do a lot. But you can't just tell people, oh, I'm doing everything. It's okay, like, you're probably doing nothing. So you need to think about what you want to offer. You can say, like, you know what, I am a data scientist, or I'm a data engineer. I'm going to partner up with someone, and we're just going to hit up the companies that already have big teams and they just need hands-on support on certain projects. You can do that. That's a positioning, right? It just comes down to what you can do well, and who you can help. And it's difficult. It's difficult. And then you have to choose the right words.
So first you think, what do I want to do? Like if I'm a data scientist, I want to help companies who already have a data science team, but maybe they are short on people, right? So then I can go there and help with the existing projects. Or I can target companies who do not have any data infrastructure, but they want to do some data stuff in the future, right? And I talk to them. So first you need to define like who is your target customer, right? And then once you define it, you need to come to them and say why they should hire you, right? So why they should get you. So in your case, it was they probably has some business, well, how to say, problems or things they want to solve, like who are our customers. So and then like you said like maybe they need segmentation or optimize market spending on marketing. Right. So I guess in this case, you need to know the domain in which they work a little bit. So then you can speak the same language to them. You can already suggest some things. So then this is your messaging, right? So this is like you have a target customer. You already have some problems in mind that you can solve for them. And this is what you pitch, right? And then if they like, they hire you. If they don't, you keep iterating on your messaging, right?
Well, yes. I mean, you essentially, you can keep iterating on your messaging. You can keep iterating on your positioning, right? And it's like, what is your value proposition? Like you can test if you can do multiple things.
Like in these two things, the first is target customer, and then this thing that you can solve them. So positioning is related to the first one, or the second, or to both.
Both. It's related to both. It's kind of it relates to both. You need to know, like, it includes who is your customer and what is your offering. And then because from that you can figure out, okay, where do these people hang out? Where do I find them? Who do I know who can introduce you to those people? How do I want to structure my messaging around that? That's part of the positioning as well.
Can you give an example of this messaging? Maybe this is what you do to your customers. This is what you suggest to your customers right now. Maybe you can do like
exactly. So for instance, like, okay, let's say we're on-demand data analysts, right? So okay, it's still very broad. Like data analysts can do a lot of things. So what can you help me with specifically? So if we're talking to, I don't know, if we're talking to a CFO, you can say like, look, we can help you optimize your revenue, right? Like these are the tight times. Everyone is, especially if we're talking about VC backed startups, investors are looking at their P&Ls with more scrutiny right now. Okay, let us help you find opportunities to either reduce your spend or to increase your revenue. If you need to optimize how much you're spending on marketing, let us help you with that. We can figure out your tracking. We can try to optimize where your marketing spend should be going. Like we calculate your return on investment, etc. Maybe we can do something around attribution. It really depends on who you're talking to. You anticipate the problems that they have.
I guess you need to do a bit of homework, right? So before you speak with a customer, you want to understand, okay, they're in this particular market segment. Probably they have this, and this problems. And then you go to a meeting with them and you say that this is what we can help with, and you start talking. And then while talking, you realize that maybe the problem is not what you want to suggest, but something related, right? And then while talking, you figure this out. Right?
Yeah, and then it's going back to how you acquire the customers. So like because that is relevant, like how, again, the positioning, etc. So we right now we're testing a few things, because last year was fantastic, right? Last year we were rejecting projects because we just did not have capacity, and last year was still a year where there was a lot of VC money, and people were still higher. End of the year, we saw like a lot of layoffs in various companies, right? And because of that, and that would also include people in the data industry. So because of that, there was influx of people into the market, and yes, there were layoffs, but there are still a lot of companies that are hiring. like you can still find a job. Like this, the competition on the market became bigger when you're a job seeker, but there are still companies that are hiring, and those companies who have the budgets and who have problems we're solving 6 months ago could not hire. And this is where you actually a external contractor is becoming very attractive to you, because you can have that person tomorrow. And trying to poach, etc. There's just not enough supply for the demand. Right now, the demand is much it's much smaller, and supply increased. Therefore, the companies who are cutting budgets, obviously, like they're cutting, like maybe taking contractors doesn't make much sense. However, it might in some cases actually. And then people who still have the certain needs to be fulfilled, they can just hire easily now, and probably cheaper because the salaries are also inflated. And now we're probably going to see a decrease in the size. The market is shifting towards the employer market a little bit.
Is there still room for consulting right now in this market?
I think it's tougher. Yes. So one of the cons of doing this is that there's uncertainty. Today you have projects, tomorrow you might not have, and essentially it is up to you to find work. But like this, I believe that it's still possible. Like we do have a little bit of work. We're talking to people. We're having leads. So there's definitely it's still, people still need support. But this is where how you position yourself, etc. This is where it becomes crucial, because you rely on certain distribution channels, let's call them that. And it's not that they're all super repeatable. It's not like you're just like, I'm going to spend money here and I know I'm going to get clients. It doesn't work like that. I mean, you can do it with outbound sales, but if you're small, that might not necessarily make a lot of sense. So yes, network, but then it's you message people, you talk to them, you wait. We do content. We try to do LinkedIn works. Actually, it's very interesting. Like, if you put yourself out there with a very constant messaging that relates with your target audience, we've seen people are actually reaching out to you to solve their problems. So that's why it's important to play around with the message and then build the content that you produce around that.
So
it
Katya,
still has to be
who put us in touch, Katya, who puts us in touch, she said exactly the same thing. And by the way, if you're listening to us right now, hi, thanks for putting us together. So I think, yeah, she mentioned that.
I mean, we know this from her. We collaborate on a few things. So that's why the messaging is important. Content in general is works, and we had people getting in touch with us in the past because someone saw a blog post that we wrote, and then someone asked that person if they know anyone. It's like, oh, actually read that blog post. You know what? Go talk to these guys. Maybe they can help you. It just building this up takes time, but in the long run, it pays off. So you do those things. You do all of them, and it all compounds, and then that's how you build a stable engine to be able to talk to people.
So you need network, and then network, you get referrals, right? So happy clients refer other clients, but you also need other sources of leads, right? And then one of the sources is content, and content could be, you mentioned LinkedIn posts. You post messages targeted at your ideal customers, at your target customers, and then you also write blog posts that are also targeted at these customers. By the way, so do you do these posts yourselves, or you have some sort of content manager? How do you do this?
No, we at the moment we do them ourselves. When we started writing blog posts, we worked with an editor, the freelance editor, who would help us, because writing is difficult. Like, it's a skill on its own.
Okay, yes, for you, for product manager, it's easier because you need to. No, for software engineers, it's probably harder than.
It's a skill. If you're not doing it on a regular, basis, it has rules that you need to, there's a lot of things to consider. So we work with someone that would, help us structure the articles better, like read through them, proofread them, point out mistakes, etc. So that helps because then you learn from that person as well. Do you get tips? You talk to that person like, hey, maybe you should structure in a different way. And the person that you work with doesn't need to know anything about what you're doing. You need to explain, etc. And then, but we still up until today, we still write our own content. I like writing my own content because it allows me to also express who I am. It's mine. So it's kind of important to me that I write that.
And then there is a question that has been there for quite some time, and I think now it's time we covered that. So the question is, how did you decide on pricing for your first client?
Okay, we're gonna go with that. I mean,
For those
pricing.
who listen to this without the video, so what did you just do?
It was a more or less random number. I mean,
Okay.
no, sorry, it wasn't random. It was a number. It was not random. So we looked at what competitors were charging, and then the way you need to think about this is you want this to be you want to base your pricing based on value. You don't base a pricing of something based on what it costs you to produce it. That's the first thing. Like if you're trying to design a product or a service, that's the first thing you need to understand. The service does not cost how much it is. The service does not cost the client or customer. It's not the price based on the manufacturing costs. It's based on the value that whatever you're doing is providing, right? And can be so. Our thinking was more or less along those lines, right? So we try to enable a data analyst. And at the time, hiring data engineers was extremely difficult because these are the times that data engineering was so hot, everyone wanted to hire one. I even did like benchmarking and then I did some LinkedIn searches to just quantify how many jobs are out there versus how many people with the title. And the gap was massive. Like in Europe, it was 100%, and in the States, it was like 200%. So even in the US, even if everyone quit or was fired or was poached and switched jobs, the gap would still exist, which is ridiculous. So data engineer cost X. I'm saving you the full-time hire. So the service, obviously, it needs to be cheaper than a full-time hire. Like that's the rule of the thumb.
Cheaper in which sense? Because I guess for you as a consultant, you need to charge a bit more than, let's say, a month of work for
Sorry, I
data
was
engineer.
referring if you're selling a product,
Okay.
right? So if you're selling a
In this
product,
sense, yeah.
and then you ballpark, okay, maybe it should be this, right? And then you see, okay, what is other competition charging? At the beginning, getting the pricing right is not that crucial. At the beginning is more important to see if whatever I'm selling sells and people are willing to pay for it, and then you will have to change your pricing on the way once you get more data points on what works, what doesn't, what is like when you learn what the value is that you provide. For consulting, like the way we look at this is also like it's not that like we charge the daily rates, but it's also not that someone is paying us for our time. Someone is paying us for the fact that we've seen things multiple times, and we will be able to tell people and navigate a situation that have never seen before, and we did. So that's why the pricing is based off of that. The other thing, when you're hiring external, we can be fired at will. Tomorrow you can tell us that we don't want to work, like we don't want to work together, and that's perfectly fine. And that's where that premium goes as well. So that's for us. We compensate that, tomorrow we're not a full-time employee, especially in Germany. It's not like when you pass probation period, it's very difficult to to let people go. So you need to include that. So that's why you pay the premium on
Is
it.
there any rule of thumb? Let's say, I don't know, take a salary of a senior data analyst and multiply it by 2 or something like that?
No, I mean, you try to figure out what the market price is, like what the hourly rate
How
is.
do you do this? Like, how do you figure? Do you see a do you look at how much other consultants charge?
Yeah, you can. I mean, we like we talk to each other. It's the community is there, and we talk to each other, and with the ones that we know, at least we kind of know what the ballpark pricing is and what everyone charges, and that's okay. When we when we first started and we had the first, like, one of the first clients, it was a person that we knew. And he was also like giving us advice on startups and how to build a company, etc. So and he had experience with actually consulting as well. And he said, like, we quoted, and he's like, so how much do you charge? And we said, like, hey, we want this. And then he looked at us and said, like, you know what? Next time you do this, I'm very happy to take that price. Next time you do this, double it.
Mhm.
And
So did you end up doing this? Did you end up doubling it for that person, or?
no,
Okay.
for the next clients, yes. So the other thing is what is really good to think about is to figure out what is your maximum rate, like what is your starting rate, like what is the ideal that you want to charge. And obviously it cannot be ridiculous, right? Like, can say I'm going to charge, I don't know, 1,000 per hour. That's just not going to fly. It's impossible. But you need to figure out, like,
Right?
the
Okay. Too bad.
I mean,
Okay.
maybe depends on what you do. It depends on what you do, right? Like,
But not in the data space, right?
not in the data space, no.
So
I
would
mean,
you say?
if you figure out that how you can sell a 1 hour of your work for 1,000, do let me know.
Uh-huh. So I
So
guess usually it's like 1,000 for a day, right? Or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that would be that's ballpark, the
Mhm.
rates. And it depends, it depends on what kind of work you're doing and how long you want to, how long is the collaboration with the client is going to last. And so you want to, so this is your starting rate, and then you also need to think about the absolute bare minimum that you are willing to take the job for. And this is useful because when someone asks you about a price, and even if it's a friendly company owner, like someone that comes from the network, like, or from close friends or whatever, and they ask you, please make me a good deal, never ever start with a good deal, because no matter what you quote, people will try to bring it down. And we made that mistake a few times,
Especially good
and
friends, right?
we made that mistake a few times. So right now we're always starting with, this is our starting rate. And then no matter what it is, people always try to bring it down. And then, you start with the high one, and then you basically end up more or less in what is acceptable.
Okay. And, with the daily price, I have no experience in consulting, just something that that's on my mind is you have this incentive to work for more days. So instead of thinking what is the most effective way to solve the problem and have a solution, you start thinking about days, like, okay, like I need 6 months for that, and then this is how much it will cost, right? So you kind of create incentive that maybe, like, for you, you don't even realize that because it's like our internal bias to work more instead of
Yes,
working less and working.
this is an excellent question. This is an excellent question. So, and you're right. Like, I mean, there is an incentive to be working to work more days, etc. Now we try, and I'm being very honest. Like, we try really, like, not to do it. We try to really, be honest and say, like, this will take X days, and then maybe it will take more, maybe it'll take less. And our incentive is, at the end of the day, we want to help, because if there's also a very big incentive for you to do a good job and for the client to be happy, because if the client
And
is
get
happy,
referrals.
exactly, because if the client is not happy, they're not going to refer you. They actually might, this is a small world. Everyone knows each other, like, especially like in the startup ecosystem in Germany, and even like in Europe in general, like, people talk. So, the fact that you didn't do a very good job is, people are going to hear about it, and you don't want that. You want them to be happy. You want them to be, you want to refer, you want them to refer you. Because no one goes into Google search, or these days Bing, if now Bing is a thing again, and says, okay, like, I need data consultants. Like, who are data consultants? No, like, you go to someone that you know and ask them, hey, do you know it? And that's how this search happens. So you want happy clients. So, if your incentive is to ride as long and then ride on the, maybe an experience or the fact that they don't know how certain things work, or they don't know the tech, or they don't know how long it's going to take, like it's going to bite you at some point. So there is also incentive to avoid that, and there's incentive to kind of be honest and actually helpful to your customers. Then there is another thing that you can turn around and say, okay, let's charge for a project. Mm. The problem with that is, unless you are okay. In general, it's very impossible to know what a deliverable should cost, because you don't know how much it's going to take before you actually start working.
You need a few iterations, right? So you cannot just come up with a project proposal that you deliver and you shake hands and you part ways, right? So you always need to make a few iterations.
If there is manual work involved, and you can automate certain things, that's obviously possible. You can build little tools for yourself that make your next project easier if it's the same type of a project. But the main effort that we do on our projects is really goes into data modeling, and that mapping of the business into SQL tables and business entities, etc., so that you can actually make this then useful for the rest of the company. You don't know how much time it's going to take. You can ballpark things, of course. Like, if you have one source, like it's probably going to be easier. I just need to figure out that one source, right? If it's your application database, okay, I know I need to talk to developers. I probably can figure, if you're an e-commerce business, or if you're a delivery company, when I look at it, I will know what I'm looking at, because this is not the first time I'm looking at it. But there'll still be bugs. There'll still be like weird things that I will need to go and figure out. I still need to talk to, stakeholders. Some of them are not like super available because they're also busy people. So you might be rescheduling things. You need to get a feel for what the stakeholder, how they like to be communicated with. You need to get a feel of, okay, how do I get the information that I need from those people? So there is always that kind of uncertainty, because you never know what we're going to discover. And usually it's impossible to project how much something should cost based on the effort that is going into it, because you just don't know. And then at some point, like if you do these projects, then there's always one side that is unhappy. Either it took less time, right? Because it's possible, like it's very viable that like you discover, it's super easy, I can solve it in a week, right? And we're charging like for a month of work. Then the client will be unhappy, because now the client thinks they're being overcharged, or you spend a significant more amount of time on it, and then it's just unprofitable for you.
Yeah, right. So we don't have a lot of time, so maybe I'll ask a very quick question, just yes and no answer. Is Germany a good country to register a consultancy company?
Yes and no. As a good consultant would say, the answer is yes and no. If you want to primarily target German companies, German small, medium-sized companies, or German enterprises, then yes, Germany is a good place to find a company, because those clients will treat you seriously, or actually will consider you at all, if you have a company in Germany. And ideally, that company is GmbH. Which is a complex form of incorporation, especially in Germany. If you don't care who your customers, like where your customers are, if it's like Europe, etc., or your customers are primarily like startups, then you can consider other countries. You can do Netherlands, and it's very easy. You can do most of it online. It's very quick. Everything is in English. You can consider Estonia. Because then it's just simplicity. Doing it in Germany has a certain amount of bureaucracy involved with it, and that comes with it, which we learned the hard way.
Where are you registered?
In Germany.
In Germany, okay. Okay, the last question. Are there any books or other resources that you can recommend to our listeners?
Other than the MAM test, yes, there is one that is very interesting that it's called Think Like a Rocket Scientist.
Okay.
And it's written by an actual rocket scientist. A person, the guy was working for NASA, and he was working on the operational team that was sending the things to Mars. And it's basically it deconstructs a way how you approach projects and how you should be thinking about projects. It has a lot of overlap with like how you would build software. Like there's like, oh, you should test, etc. But it's just basically it shows you it breaks down how you should start with your problem or like the big idea, and then kind of reverse engineer and start like and formulate a plan from the top down, rather than just like trying things randomly. And it's written in a very easy way, and there are like really cool examples and real stories from like how from like the space missions and how NASA would screw things up. It's an easy light read, but it actually there's a lot of good advice. So if you don't have extensive experience in product management field, and because like I do those things on autopilot, right now, but it actually teaches you the kind of thinking that is needed. Like starting a company is a project. Like how would you go about it, right? There is a lot of good advice there.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have time for today. So thanks a lot, Aleksander, for joining us today.
Thank
for
you.
sharing your knowledge, expertise, all the learnings that you, like everything you learned from your experience of starting a company, starting a consultancy company. So, and thanks everyone for joining us today too, for listening in, for asking questions, and have a great weekend, everyone.